Welcome to the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, where you will learn top strategies from world-class real estate investors, both large and small. Why not? Tune in and get started today.
We're like, all right, we need to probably shift our focus rather than being the developer. Let's shift our focus over to being the lender because you're in the safest part of the capital stack. You're getting paid no matter what. Right. So that was the biggest thing for us too. So we're like, all right, you know what? Let's transition over. So a lot of our competition literally overnight became our borrowers because we also had we maintained really good relationships with these guys because we would wholesale to them as well. So literally overnight with a flip of a switch, these guys became our borrowers and still are to this day.
Hey, what's up, all of my real estate peeps? This is Brian Lucier with another episode of the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, where we interview seasoned and sometimes not so seasoned real estate investors, where we believe investing in multi-class is one of the best asset classes in real estate, although we have been proved wrong on a couple of shows. So my apologies to my guest today because we were halfway through the show and I realized I didn't hit record. So we're going to make up some time here and we're going to get back to where we were. So our guest on the show today is a co-founder and director of organization at We Lend LLC. We Lend is a tech-forward private lending firm specializing in providing fast, efficient capital solutions to real estate investors. Our guest embarked on his real estate career at the age of 21 and has since managed over $350 million in various types of real estate projects, ranging from simple fix and flips to complex large-scale developments. A graduate of Pace University, he holds his degree in legal studies and computer science, equipping him with a unique skill set to revolutionize real estate investing, financing through technology. His innovative approach, entrepreneurial acumen, and tech savvy has established We Lend as a leader in the private lending industry. Ladies and gentlemen, all of my real estate peeps, it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome to the show today co-founder and director of origination at We Lend LLC, Mr. Suleymanov. Solomon, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to this and for your viewers to check this out and get some gems out of it.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this is a deja vu moment here. And, we just had a great interview. My bad, I didn't hit the record. So I'm going to jump right in here. So, Solomon, what did you used to do before becoming a real estate investor?
So before entering into the real estate world, I don't want to say straight out of high school, but I graduated high school, decided to take some time off. I was like, hey, you know what? I don't know what I want to do. At that time, my mom was telling me, hey, why don't you go to pharmacy school? So my mom is a pharmacist as well. So I was like, you know what? Before I do that, let me go and work at a pharmacy. Let me see if I actually like this line of work. So I was working at a pharmacy for about a year and a half. It was a closed door pharmacy, high volume pharmacy. So they were doing like 2,000 scripts a day. It was a great time. I was there for about a year and a half, where I decided, I'm like, all right, this is not something that I want to do with my life. I don't want to be sitting here and looking at pills all day and interacting with these people and talking about their issues. So I was like, all right, this is not something for me. So at that time, my brother, along with my cousin, just embarked on their real estate journey, working for a firm where they were specializing in distressed real estate in New York City. So at that time, they were coming to me and saying, hey, Sal, why don't you come over and work with us? I kind of was brushing him off at the time. But then after that year and a half, I was like, you know what? I think it's time I enter into the real estate world and join my cousins and my brother. So I gave them a buzz. I was like, guys, I just quit. I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's make some money together.
So that's interesting. And were there other influences as you were growing up that may have led you to real estate?
So there was. So my father was always, when we were young, my father would always tell us, "Hey, I want you guys to get into real estate. I want you guys to sell, buy, fix, flip, the whole nine." And the reason why he was telling us this all the time is because he worked for a very wealthy man, a billionaire who was on Forbes 500, and that person amassed his wealth through real estate. So my dad was pretty much with him all the time, and he saw that, and he's like, I want to pass that to my kids, right? So that was huge for him, and that was definitely one of the ways as to why one of the reasons as to why I got into real estate.
So here you are, you're in pharmacy, you went that whole route, you hit the ground running your first day with your brother and your cousin. What did that day look like? I'm sure it was all glamorous, but what was your first day as a real estate investor?
It was hard. It was definitely not easy. I mean, growing up, I was an introvert. So my first day was literally making cold calls and door knocking on people's homes, which I definitely did not enjoy because I grew up as an introvert. But I had a lot of no's. I guess I was afraid of rejection at that time. But it's definitely built, me as who I am today, right? Like I learned a lot more. People learn a lot more through their failures than they do through success, which I think is huge. So yeah, so it was hard. It was definitely not easy. But again, I enjoyed it. Eventually I enjoyed it. In the beginning, it was a really tough. People cursing at me, spitting at me, wanted to get into fights with me. But obviously, these people are in distress. So for them, it's like, um, it's their home. They're financially distressed. So I understand where they're coming from. But yeah, but I overcame it, which is amazing. And yeah, here I am today.
So when you joined up with your brother and your cousin, what was that business model like? What was the asset class you were going after?
So the business model there really, because they also just started in the industry, so they really didn't have much experience either. So the gameplay there was really to wholesale, right? So like before we started fixing and flipping and developing, wholesale was the first thing that we started to do, right? And like what we would do is wholesale the property, enter into contract, you flip your contract to a real estate investor, developer, whatever the case was. You follow that transaction, you see where that transaction goes. What steps did that investor take? Like, what do they do to the property? How do they renovate it? etc. So we did numerous transactions on the wholesaling side where we had enough uh, comfort to be able to go in and actually start buying these properties ourselves, fixing them up, and then flipping them. So it was a whole motto of crawl before you walk, walk before you run.
And what type of properties were these?
So these asset classes, I mean, we initially started with SFRs, like single family homes and 2 to 4 units. And then eventually that grew into, 5+ unit multifamily properties, mixed use properties, along with developments in the New York City area.
So you've got this momentum, you've built up your teams, you've got people you can depend on. You're doing wholesale deals at this time.
Yeah, initially when we started, we were just wholesaling properties. Yep.
Okay,
Because we
so
also didn't have a lot of liquidity either, right? So we didn't come into the industry with money. So we needed a fast way to make money. And at that time, well, one, fast way to make money, two, some sort of experience, with these properties, fixing and flipping these properties. So it was a two, like it was killing two birds with one stone. One, we were wholesaling these deals within like 30 days. We were in contract, flip them, make our, few bucks, and then move on to the next one. And then got to the point where we're just fixing and flipping ourselves.
so what was that moment where you're wholesaling off a deal to someone and they take it? Was there like a moment in time you said, "Well, wait a minute, there's something going on here because they're making a killing and we're not."
Yeah, so I mean, look, we always would look at the ARV, the after repair value, on every single deal that we would wholesale, and then like we would follow the transaction and actually see if it would hit that ARV. I would want to say 8 out of 10 times it hit the ARV, and then we kind of would like be like, okay, what were the reasons why it didn't hit the ARV? So like we kind of would do like a trial and error, not with our own money though, and just by just following the transaction of who we wholesale the property over to. So that kind of gave us the experience, but then we got to the point where like, all right, we have enough liquidity for us to make that jump, make that leap of faith, if if you wish, to start and just start fixing and flipping these properties ourselves, because the juice is in fixing it up yourself, not just wholesaling it. So we were able to source these properties and these deals. Now we're like, you know what? We don't want to be the middleman anymore. We want to be, direct, and let's start rocking and rolling. So, thankfully, one of our brothers, he's a cousin. He has construction experience because he came from the real estate investing world in 06, 07, down in Florida. Unfortunately, lost it all during the financial crisis. But thankfully, got back into it with us.
So, like you say, crawl before you walk before you run. So you started wholesaling, then you started taking on the deals, walking. So,
Yeah.
at what point did you transition from being that type of business model, second level up? When did you start to do developing?
So the development really fell into our lap. We weren't really looking for it. It kind of found us. And that happened where a person was in distress in their property, and this is in Brooklyn, New York. It was a single family home. It was sitting on a oversized lot. Um, we picked it up. I believe it was like for like 180 or like 200,000 bucks. And we're like, what is the best use for this property? And then, we were start looking at the zoning. We're like, wow, this property has amazing zoning. It's sitting on an oversized lot. Let's speak to an architect. Let's see, what we can do with this property. If we can, get, I don't know, a nice structure on it. I believe it was like 15 units there, that we can build. So our architect's like, yeah, you can build up to 15 units. It's a mixed use building comprised of like, I believe it was like 12 residential units and like 2 commercial units. So long story short, we got the approved plans on it. But we weren't developers at that time, so we kind of didn't want to dabble in that. And then we reached out to a few other developers to partner up on the deal. They kind of shied away from it for whatever reason. Maybe they just didn't like the area much. So what we ended up doing is we just flipped that property over to another developer with the approved plans. Pretty much, it was shovel ready. Flipped it over to them, and we made a nice buck. I think we sold it for like either 900 or 950,000 bucks, so nearly $1 million. We made a really nice profit on that deal. But then after, like with other developments, like what we did is we piggybacked off of other real estate developers' experience, right? So these guys had, I don't know, 20 years of development experience that we were able to piggyback off of, and have a smooth sailing with those development projects rather than us trying to do it on our own with no experience. And probably we would fail on our first or second project, and lose money on it, right? So what we did is like, hey, we don't want to lose any money. We can't afford to lose money, so we're like, you know what? Let's piggyback off of a developer that has the experience. We'll take a 50% haircut on the equity, whatever it is, but we'll gain the experience.
So smart. So you took what you learned from wholesaling, you took what you're learning from doing your fix and flips and fixing up these properties, being the contractor, the GC.
Yep.
And now you've rolled it into, you found this deal, found this opportunity. I think you maybe made 200, 300% based on going in at 200. You probably spent 100 on plans,
Yeah.
sold it at 1 million. So 300 in, 600 back ish.
Yeah.
That's a nice payday. That's okay.
Yeah. We had great profit margins back in like 2015, 2014. There was not as much competition as there is today. There's also not a lot of liquidity in the real estate market, in a sense where you had lenders shoving money down your throat to go and do a fix and flip. It was private guys. When we were borrowing money, we were paying 14% like 3 or 4 points. It was a old school guy that would lend us out money. Unlike, some lenders today, which are a little bit more institutionalized, where they come and they do an appraisal, they want to see a scope of work, they want to see your track record. This person just wanted to see who you are, if you're good for it. You had to come with a recommendation. He likes the projects, he likes the location. He'll go inside, look at the property. He says, all right, how much do you need? Here you go. He wires you the money. You get the project going, and then you eventually sell it. So yeah.
So you've got to the third level here where now you're picking up these deals, you're doing all the heavy lifting for a developer, you're dealing with city hall, the permits, the zoning, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
now you're wholesaling a development like packaged with a bow.
Correct. Exactly. Exactly. So what we would do is we would buy the raw land, get approved plans on it, and pretty much have a shovel ready property for the developer, right? So the biggest thing for a developer is time, right? Time is money. So these guys, they don't want to go and be running around in Department of Buildings trying to get these approvals or going back and forth with their architects to get things done. A lot of these guys, they want a shovel ready property where they're going into the project. They go to their lender and say, hey, I'm purchasing this property. Here are the approved plans. This is how much I need. I'll get this project completed within 18 or 24 months. Let's get rocking and rolling, right? So that's what we did, right? So that's what we were able to do. We were just flipping over these properties over to these developers. They were doing all the heavy lifting, and then we just made a nice spread on what we purchased it for and what the cost was to get the plans approved.
So with this third business model, what type of returns, what type of margins were you pulling down?
At those times, we were probably pulling like maybe because this was already like 16, 17, the profit margins were slowly coming down already. So I would say like 150% on our money, roughly around that area. When we just started fixing and flipping ourselves after wholesaling, we were making 2 to 300% on our money. And
Wow.
then as the years went by, it started, started to decline because there's a lot more competition that was coming into the industry, and there was a lot more liquidity for the competition to be able to purchase these properties. But yeah, so that's where we're at.
So now you're up to this point where you're doing this niche type of product where you're packaging this whole development where you can just hand it off to someone. What was that transition like to get to We Lend? We Lend is the company,
Yeah,
your private money.
yeah,
So how did you transition from these wrapped up with a bow, ready to go, shovel ready? I love that term.
yeah,
I've never heard that on the show before. So thank you for bringing that in.
yep.
What was the transition like to go from those shovel ready packages to private lender?
It was twofold. One, we were in a project in the Bronx where we lost around 70 or 80 thousand dollars, where we made a few mistakes on a project where we didn't build the basement. And we thought we saved $60,000 by not building it out. So we're like, hey, it won't be an issue for any of these buyers. They'll take it. There shouldn't be a problem. Um, of course, that did not happen. Every single buyer that would walk into that property, they're like, hey, we want a finished basement. We want a finished basement that has, enough clearance. So what ended up happening is we took a 70 or $80,000 hit. We had a massive price cut. But at the end of the day, we had a private money loan on it as well. We had a hard money loan on it. So that was the biggest reason as to why we had to do those price cuts, because we wanted to stop the bleeding, because we had a monthly payment every single month. So we're like, you know what? Let's just stop the bleeding now. Let's just take this haircut and just move on to the next deal. Um, our lender made every single penny that he was supposed to make, but while we walked away with like an $80,000 loss, we're like, crap. Um, but also at the same time, 2018 came around and there was so much competition where we went from seeing 300% returns on our money. Now it's coming down to less than 100% return on your money. We're like, all right, we need to probably shift our focus. Rather than being the developer, let's shift our focus over to being the lender, because you're in the safest part of the capital stack. You're getting paid no matter what. All
Right.
right. So that was the biggest thing for us too. So we're like, all right, you know what? Let's transition over. So a lot of our competition literally overnight became our borrowers, because we also we maintained really good relationships with these guys, because we would wholesale to them as well. So literally overnight with a flip of a switch, these guys became our borrowers and still are to this day.
That is really smart.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that there were two events that went on. One was this deal which went belly
Yeah.
up. What was the other event?
So the second event was 2018, where deal flow was really tightening up, and the profits on these deals also have been tightening up. We went from making 200 to 300% on our money to making less than 100% on our money, maybe 50 or 60% on our money. For us, that was not normal. So we're like, all right, you know what? It's definitely time for us to be able. We have to transition over to being lenders.
So I'm going to cheat here. The notes from our previous conversation. Um, your brothers or cousins went down to Texas. Can you tell me what happened
Correct.
there?
Yeah. So they went down. So my brother and my cousin went down to Texas, looking for a cheaper source of capital. But at the same time, in the back of their minds, they were thinking about opening up this private lending shop. Well, which is We Lend today. So what ended up happening there is they walked in as private real estate investors and walked out as private hard money lenders. So that was the biggest transition that we had in our partnership. So, but yeah, so that's what happened there. We went in looking for cheaper capital and came out as lenders.
So here we are. Crawl, walk, run, fly.
Yeah,
Now, and as private money, and we've used this in our experience as well. We went in and did some deals. It was nice, but your job is to write a check and get a bigger one back.
correct. Yeah, we're not doing all the legwork that real estate investor developer is doing. But again, listen, I call myself a cheaper partner rather than them going and getting an equity partner. They come in, they get a capital partner like us, where I'm charging 10 to 12% on my money, and they're still making their nice juicy return on their money, and they're able to they keep 100% of it, rather than splitting it 50-50 with someone that goes into the deal with them.
So, what does We Lend LLC look like today? What's your business? What's going
So So to date, we've been in business for 7 years. To date, we funded north of $600 million in business purpose loans across various asset classes, such as single family homes, 2 to 4 units, multifamily, uh, all the way up to like 60, 70 units, plus mixed use, and some industrial here and there.
So, in your whole transition in that second gear when you were purchasing, you were the GC and actually doing these properties, you were
Yeah.
probably building your portfolio. So
Yep.
now you're on the hard money end of it or the private lending one of it. Are you still adding to your assets? Are you still building your portfolio?
So we're in New York City, which is unfortunately it's a blue state where it becomes very tough for real estate developers and investors. Um, I've seen some of our borrowers lose 40 or 50% of their value of their portfolio on their rent stabilized or rent controlled properties that they own, just because of some city um, changes in the city law, unfortunately, where they pretty much are just destroying this market in New York City. But to answer your question, we are still expanding our portfolio, but we are super conscious of which asset class we are focusing on. Right, so like we in the New York City area, we stay away from rent stabilized or rent controlled assets, and we probably will go up to like 5 units, right below that mark where the property would be stabilized or controlled, or just purchasing a free market building. But on top of it all, today our deal flow is still coming in and still rampant because we have um, borrowers that come to us and say, hey, I'm looking to JV on a deal, or I'm looking for an equity partner, or hey, I just want to wholesale this deal because I just have too many deals going on today. So they share their deals with us. And there are times where we come in as an equity partner, or they wholesale the deal over to us as well. So
You mentioned something really important there that some of your clients who are coming to you to use you as private money
Yeah.
offering you equity. So there's a coined term out there called dequity, debt and equity.
Yes.
So
Yes.
at that point of it, you're writing a check, getting a bigger check back, but you're also keeping a piece of the pie.
Yeah, it's not for every single deal. I would want to say, out of the 1,300 loans that we financed, I would want to say maybe less than 10% of that, definitely like maybe like 5% of that was for debt and equity plays. Um, but these people are like they're at the point where like, you know what, we don't want to look for more capital outside of the debt. So they're like, we'll just come to our lender and say, hey, we'll give you an equity portion as well, to come into the deal, which is nice. And I totally understand because there are times where we had to go out and raise equity ourselves for our deals, and it was not easy. Um, yeah.
So you're looking at 1,300 loans over 7 years.
Yep.
Are you finding like the Pareto principle, 80/20 rule, right? Is 80% of your business coming from 20% of your clients? Are you getting a lot of repeat clients who are coming in?
So about 65% of our portfolio today in loans are repeat business,
That's
which is great.
that's incredible.
Um, yeah, yeah, because that shows that one, they love our service, they love our products, and they want to come back to us because there are a lot of people out there that, there are a lot of lenders out there to begin with, right? There's so many private lenders out there that these people can go to anyone. But they choose to come back to us, which is amazing, and it's a great feeling because we know we're doing something right. We service is one of the biggest things, and speed, right? We get these deals, these loans closed within like 7 to 10 days for our borrowers. And we're pretty flexible, right? We want to make sure our borrower is successful in the project that they're entering into. That's very important for us. We're not a loan to own shop. We want to make sure that the loans that we're making out to our borrowers are good, and that our borrowers are making money from these deals. Because if they're not making money, they're not paying off my loan. Um, and this is my personal capital, along with my brothers, along with friends and family as well. So if we lose that, then that's no good for us.
Yeah, what do they say? If you owe the bank $1,000, it's your problem. If you owe the bank $1 million, it's the bank's problem.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to be on that side of that.
Yep.
So really interesting to get from pharmacy and pills all the way to writing checks and get a bigger one back. Um, in your time span, let's see. So you jumped into the real estate market 2010.
So no, I jumped in 2012. 2010, I just, yeah, in 2010, I was already dabbling in like in the I was dabbling in the pharmacy world, and yeah, 2012 is when I actually started. I dove into real estate, but I did get my license. I went to a real estate school to get my license, um, a real estate agent license, because my father was pushing me after high school to go get it. So I kind of was sort of was there, but 2012 is really where it really started. And I went full force.
Okay, so we're 13 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you started at 21, what is that? You're 35?
So I'm 34 this year. 34 this year.
Yeah,
You're almost there.
I'm over 34. We'll leave it at that. Wow. So here you are, 13 years of experience. And this part of the show I always enjoy because I turn on the Wayback Machine where if you could go back to Sal 13 years ago, what advice would you give to yourself on your path? And then I come back to today, what advice would you give to a newbie who's seeing this show maybe for the first time? What advice does that newbie need to hear? So let's start with your story. If you could
Yeah.
go back in time, what advice would you have given yourself?
What advice would I give myself? It's a good question because one, I would say definitely have a mentor. Having a mentor that has gone through life, that you can bounce ideas off of. Someone that you can talk to and ask questions, be like your guide, like a guide in life. Having the right team with you is great. I was lucky to have that and still have that today. But then also is focus, right? I think that's also very important is staying focused and keep grinding and doing what you have to do to to persevere, right? So consistency also comes into play with the focus, and persistency is huge as well. So um, making sure that you're the path to success is not a straight line, right? It's like you have your ups and downs. So I feel that's why like having a mentor is huge. They pretty much are there to boost up your morale and just tell you, hey, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, you need to make this adjustment or that adjustment. I have a coach today, and I think it's amazing. I probably will have it till I probably retire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, have you ever thought about getting a finance degree?
I did. Well, that's another thing. So I should have probably. We're laughing because we already had this conversation. Oh man, I did actually want to. Looking back at it now, I did want to get a degree in finance rather than going for computer science. Just with everything that I'm doing today is revolving around finance. I wish I did go to school for finance. I still do to this day.
So, yeah, I mean, for our viewers, we've already had this conversation, so there's a lot of deja vu going on here. But I'll just save you some time here. We walked through the finance degree, and 4 years of that, 2 years grad, 2 more years masters, 8 years. You're 13 years in, but your 8 years of finance degree would come with like 8 years of student debt. So you're starting out a finance degree way in the hole, where
Yeah.
you paid your dues, you did it street smart, you educated yourself, you had mentors, you trained yourself along the way, so you got your equivalent of a master's degree without the student debt.
Yeah. And then with also what we were talking about earlier, being street smart rather than it has to be a fine balance between the two, right? Being book smart and being street smart. Because as you and I both know, being book smart is one thing, but then when you go out there and you try to implement an idea in the real world and real life, it's completely different. It's completely different. It's a different ball game. So that's why like sometimes where um, and not to knock on anyone like teachers or like real estate teachers or like professors or they're great, but they're only book smart because they never actually went out there and implemented something in the real world.
Yeah.
Because thesis can be amazing, but then when you go out there and you try to make something happen, it's completely different.
Yeah, it's like understanding the theory of gravity and then feeling the pain when you fall.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little
Exactly.
different. Hey,
Yeah,
you never mentioned this part in the book. Yeah, that
exactly.
hurts a little bit. So I'm going to cheat a little bit more. One of the other things you said you probably wouldn't have done is partied, but we talked
Yeah,
about how that was valuable. So could you
yeah,
take me to that 2 o'clock in the morning encounter?
absolutely. So yeah, I definitely would party probably a little bit less, but to what you said was great. You're like, listen, that's what build you up to who you are today when you're networking or dealing with people. And I totally agree with you on that part. Yeah, the funny story was a 2 a.m. story in New York City where I was talking to a girl outside of my car in front of a club. And then there was somebody that ran up to me and said, hey, I know you from somewhere. I know you from somewhere. And I guess it was through like social media, through like one of these podcasts and Instagram. He's like, yeah, he's like, you're that lender. He's like, I have so many deals I want to talk to you about, blah, blah, blah. So I had to put the girl to the side and I had to get into business mode. I'm like, all right, let's talk about your deals. Let's see what you got going on. And we closed 2 transactions with this guy. Um, yeah, and that was great. And I'm like always on, right? So that's what my thing is. Like I'm always on. Like my business mind is always working. And I feel like life is also, this sounds super cliche. We talked about this earlier too. Is like life is all about sales. Like at the end of the day, you're always selling something, right? Like you're going to your parents, you want to get a PlayStation or an Xbox or whatever it is. you're going there. You're selling yourself, right? You're selling what you want. You're pitching them. So, um, sales is huge. And from where I came from initially, being an introvert to where I am today, being a director of originations is. If I looked at myself when I just graduated high school and I said, "Hey, you'll be here today," I'll be like, "There's no effing way. There's no way that's me." But it's great. But yeah, so yeah, listen, I'm always on. It was 2 a.m. We closed a couple of deals, a month or two after. It was nice.
So, did you close the other transaction outside of your company?
Unfortunately, not. She ended up leaving because I was talking to this guy for like 30 minutes.
Well, one of them made you money, one of them would have cost you money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was more of an asset. She was more of a liability.
All right. So, the newbies, we'll say that.
Yes.
So, the newbies who are on the fence, seeing this for the first time, finding out about real estate and thinking, wow, that might be something that might be interesting. What advice would you give to a newbie who's sitting on the fence right now, who's ready to jump but not sure?
Two things. One, find yourself a mentor who's already in the real estate industry today, that's been through it, that's going through it today. Um, and then two, educate yourself, right? Whether it's going to get a real estate license, I feel like you really don't learn much there. Again, that's being book smart and not street smart, but actually going out there, being boots on the ground, going out there and selling these properties, going out there and trying to list these properties, understanding how a seller thinks, understanding how a buyer thinks. Um, Rather than going into a fix and flip initially, maybe you want to wholesale a deal or two to just to understand how a transaction works and how just real estate works in general, right? So go out there and actually do it. Is huge. But yeah, mentor is huge. And then another very big important part is having the right team with you once you're ready to go out there and start developing or fixing and flipping or even wholesaling, right? You want to have the right people around you. I was lucky enough to have my brother and my two cousins, and everyone has a role, right? One person has a role for asset management, which can also be construction work. Another role is an investor relations role, someone that's coming in and raising money for you. Third can be on the sales side where they're coming in, they're bringing in the deal flow. So yeah, I think that's super important. And then fourth, of course, one of the most important is someone out there that's going to be analyzing these properties and the deals for you. Once you start having the volume and the deal flow that you want to have. So yeah, and also delegation is very important.
Right. And you're hitting so many of the bases here. And
Yeah,
for that newbie who's hearing all this and say, oh my God, these four things I need to do. Well, take a look at Sal here. I mean, he started out wholesaling, then he started doing his fix and flips, then he started doing these shovel ready packages. Now he's a lender. It wasn't, I say this just about on every show, overnight success that took 13 years.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, anyone who's looking at this, any newbie who's hearing what Sal's saying, you got to pay your dues. You got to get started. You got to wake up that day, throw your feet on the ground, and just get started. Just do it.
Yeah, yeah. You won't be making crazy money the first couple of years. Look, real estate is a long game. If you're not in here for the long game, real estate is not for you. If you're looking just to maybe fix and flip one or two properties, great. In concept, it works. In theory, it works. But when you're going out there and actually trying to find these deals, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
It is a full-time job. Yes, you can go out there and get a wholesaler to get you a deal. In today's market, wholesalers are still out there. They still have decent deals. But guess what? You got to go out there and find that wholesaler, right? Again, still a full-time job. Real estate is definitely a long game. The first couple of years, you're not going to make crazy money. But again, if you're in it for the long run, you'll be successful.
And you're 33.
Yeah, I still got time to go.
Okay, so for that newbie who's hearing this, I didn't start the game until I was 38.
Wow.
Right.
What
So
did you do before?
graphic design, marketing,
Nice.
illustration. So
Marketing is huge though. I'm sure it's helped with your real estate portfolio as well.
rumor has it, it has.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm all big about the brand.
that's
So
huge.
I want to put the spotlight back on you. And again, Sal, we've hit the point where we've covered everything we've covered. To my viewers, to you, I can only express my appreciation in your graciousness to allow me to backtrack and get this far. But now we're going to move on. So, in your 13 years, this part is the deal deep dive, where I'm going to ask, what's the best deal you ever did? What type of property was it? How did you find it? And how did you finance it? And it could be any deal you've done.
So do you mind if I talk about a deal that I financed for a borrower?
You can do whatever you want. This is your show.
Awesome. So yeah, I love being on the lending side because you get a bird's eye view of so many investors and how they think and what they think and their strategies. It's amazing. I'm not going to spill any beans here because I know there are going to be a few of my borrowers that listen in onto this, and they probably would be upset if I would. But what these guys do is just genius. I mean, a recent transaction that we financed is a conversion play in Brooklyn, right? Because I really want to talk about what's in the market today. Because when we were doing these types of deals, it was very different from what the market is today. The market is so competitive today; it's very different. And this is where investors need to become a little bit more savvy and think outside the box. So what this investor is doing today is he purchased this brownstone in Brooklyn, New York, for about $1 million and change, $1.5 million, I believe, and he's putting another $1 million in construction. Right now, it's set as a two-family home, but what he's doing is he's converting this into 3 or 4 condos, right? Which is huge, and he's getting the bang for his buck here. So rather than him sitting there and maybe selling it as a two-family and selling it maybe for $2 million or $2.5 million, what he's doing now is has separate condo units, which each condo he'll probably sell out at like $1.6, $1.7 million, right? So right there, that's about roughly like $4.5 million sellout rather than a $2.5 million sellout, which is a home run. And it's a genius move from that standpoint. Another project I can tell you about myself, where we recently did with a borrower of ours, it was a 3-family home, which we converted into a single-family luxury home. Again, this really depends on what market you're in. And the market that we're predominantly in, in financing is, I don't want to say luxury markets, but the high-end market in the New York City area, where, you're purchasing a brownstone for, $1 million, $1.5 million. You're putting in, anywhere from like 500 to like $1.5 million in construction, sometimes even more. So conversion plays are huge right now, right? And then I always get this question asked to me from a first-time investor. Well, how can I get into a deal like this? There's no lender that's going to finance these projects for me. I tell them, you find a deal, you find this deal, and you have you find a deal, and then you have a mentor that you're working with that's already an investor or a developer that's going to come in on the project with you, and you share your profit with them, right? You piggyback off their experience.
Yeah. I mean, you can have one slice of 100 pies or 100%, and either way you'll get there. And
Yep.
It's a lot easier to do it without the risk involved, because you've got the mentor, you've got the experience, you've got all those other team members who are coming in to make sure, okay, you don't turn left here, you don't turn right, we got to go this way.
Exactly.
So I'm putting the spotlight back on that brownstone. He's 1.5, $1 million in, he's 2.5 purchase and rehab, whatever he's got to do to get it, selling it at 2.7 each, that's 7.5. His payday is $5 million. Now he owns a condo association.
Oh, he's flipping these properties.
Oh, he's just...
Yeah, he's selling these condos. So he builds them out, and then he just flips these condos, and he goes on to the next project. For him, it doesn't make sense for him to hold on to these condos. So what he likes to do is he builds it, gets the condo books, and then he flips his contract. Well, flips his contract. He sells the condos. He has a sellout.
So somewhere there's someone picking this up as a business for a condo association.
No, you have end users that actually buy these condos. So they're all individual. They're all considered to be individual units. And then he has condo sellouts.
Okay.
So so rather than trying to find a buyer at $2.5 million for one property, now the price point is a lot lower and it's a lot more affordable for someone to come in and buy these homes,
That's
and your sellout is a lot greater.
that's smart.
Yeah. So you're
That's,
liquidating a lot quicker.
yeah. Easier in and out and a bigger payday.
Exactly.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And he'll keep coming back.
Exactly.
So I don't need to know the number, but was there a percentage? I mean, are you at the 10 to 12% even on this deal?
Yeah. For him, I believe I was at 11% rate and I charged 2 points. Um, I gave him 80%, 80 or 85% on his acquisition, and then 100% on his construction cost.
Wow. Do that
Yeah.
all day long.
Yep.
Tell me a little about the three family to the luxury single family house. That was one of your deals.
Yeah. So I did a JV and equity deal with a borrower who, I guess at that time he had a liquidity crunch and he's like, hey, I'm in too many projects. I'm spread thin. Can you come in as an equity partner and a debt? So I came in as debt and equity, which was fun. But yeah, so this was in a luxury market as well in Brooklyn. So yeah, that was a three-family home. I mean, look, these properties are old, right? These properties are like date way back to like the 1800s. Uh, these are brownstones, limestones. This one, in this case, was a brownstone. Beautiful building. And the market today demands luxury single-family homes in this area because a lot of people, what's happening is they're not able to afford Manhattan prices. So now they're walking over to Brooklyn, and just taking the train into the city. So the demand is there. The market is hot. It's booming. And yeah, so we went from a three-family to a single-family home. We knew somebody would want to buy it as a single family, and they'll pay the price for it. I believe we dumped in around like 600,000 or $650,000 in construction. Yeah, so that was a nice project.
So what was the purchase on that?
The
The
purchase there, I believe, was around roughly 1.3 million. Um, and then the sellout, I believe the sellout was like 3 million bucks, if I'm not mistaken, around that range.
so 1.1 million payday.
Yeah, it was a nice payday. But
Okay.
also there's a heavy lift, right? You have a heavy lift with the construction. There's a lot that has to be
Yeah.
done, and then your carrying costs are huge too, right? You have a monthly nut. You got to pay, um, you know, uh, uh, debt of 10 to 12%. So we came in as equity, but then we also gave him debt. So he was paying the portion of the debt. But yeah, I mean, listen, again, you need to have the experience for you to be able to take on a project like that, because if something goes wrong, you need a quick solution, because you're paying your lender every single month. So you want to make sure you're out of that loan as soon as you can be.
So could you take a ballpark at what you think the carrying costs were? And what was the timeline on that? Was it three?
I'll tell you right now what the carrying costs were. Let me
Beautiful.
plug in some numbers. I got my Excel spreadsheet over here. No finance degree, but I can still do this. Um,
Well played, young man.
yeah. All right. So the carrying cost was, where do we see here? The interest expenses alone, this is based on an 11% rate, nearly 11% rate. The interest expenses alone for, let's say this would be an 18-month term loan because there's a bit more heavy construction going on here. The interest alone is roughly around $310,000 for 18 months, right? And then, of course, people tend to forget is you have property taxes that you need to pay, which is huge. And then you also have maintenance. Then also when you're purchasing the property, you have your closing costs, right? Unfortunately, in New York, we have a mansion tax. So anything over $1 million, you're getting hit with a mansion tax of 1.5%. Then you also have a transfer tax. Then you have a mortgage tax, right? If you even get a mortgage, you got to pay 1% mortgage tax. Then you have title insurance, right? There's so many things that come into play that you have to pay for, unfortunately. So yeah, the interest cost itself is $310,000, and let's not forget the construction, right? There's a construction cost. Like we give you the construction money, like we finance the construction portion for you as well. But then the way that works is we reimburse you, right? So it's like a credit line. So you got to put in your money first, and then we replenish your cash.
Sure, sure. So net, I mean, and thank you for exposing the carrying costs because somebody hears
Yeah,
this for the first time say, "Well, that sounds like a breeze." No, no, there's a lot of heavy lifting.
yeah.
So your net on this over 18 months, and you're splitting it with your partner, you're probably clearing 15 to 20 grand a month over the 18 year when the whole thing nets out. Still not a horrible deal.
Yeah, so this is an 18. This was like an 18-month term loan.
Yeah.
Yeah, this property ended up flipping. I just don't remember how much. Let's say worst case scenario was like 3 million bucks. Actually no, I think it was like 3.2. I forgot what the numbers are. I should have had it in front of me. But yeah, it was a nice amount of money that was made. I think maybe like 80% of our money, something like that. I'll look at the numbers. I'll let you know a little bit later on. You can
So,
share with
somebody hearing this and say, "Wow, that's great. I want to do that." But you're coming to the table with 13 years experience and a
yeah.
finance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and anybody who's hearing this, you got to pay your dues.
Yeah,
So, really interesting. And then because you've got all these clients coming in, you're getting deal flow brought to you. You're not hunting.
correct.
So you're attracting. You're not chasing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's gold.
It is. It is. I mean, we really don't play in this world anymore where we're coming in as investors and developers. But like from time to time, this deals are so good that we were like we can't pass up on it. So we take it.
So, what's the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome as a real estate investor or lender, and how did you solve it?
The biggest hurdle that we had to overcome as lenders was going over specific mark that we're hitting in monthly loan volume. That was the biggest hurdle. That's where I learned a lot about myself and like what I should be doing with the team, how to position the team properly to be able to capture more market share. But yeah, we were originating X amount of loans on a monthly basis, and we wanted to do Y. Let's say we're doing 20 million, we're trying to do like 40 million. That was always tough to figure out.
Were your numbers too high or were your numbers too low?
So our thing is we always want to do more, right? For us, it was too low.
Okay.
All right, doing 20 million a month is too low. So we're trying to do at least 40 million a month.
So, how did you solve that? Or, I mean, so before you answer that question, I'm reading this book, Profit First, and this woman goes in and hears this motivational speaker, and she hears the speaker say, you do X, Y, Z, and you get 80% returns. So she goes out, does X, Y, Z, and she gets like 10%. She goes,
Right.
"Well, I did something wrong." So she tries harder, tries harder, tries harder. Finally, she gets up to like 65, 75%. And she sees this motivational speaker again. She says, "Hey, I've done everything you told me, and I went back and studied it and did it harder and everything. How do you get to the 80%? And the speaker says, 80? I said 18.
That's hilarious. Sometimes you got to push yourself. It's all it comes down to. But I read this book called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. It's a phenomenal book. Talks about objectives, talk about key results. Pretty much just keeps you focused and has you understand like what are my pain points and how do I solve them, right? Like these are the steps that I have to take to solve these issues. So that was a great book. So Measure What Matters, I think, has helped a lot, our organization a lot. And that's thanks to our coach that recommended that book to us. And he's read it himself as well. So really good book. It's definitely changed the trajectory of We Lend. my personal life as well. But yeah, that's what's really helped.
So you nailed my next question before I asked it. I was going to ask, is there a book that you would recommend? So now I'm going to do the follow-up question. Is there a second book that has had an influence on you as a real estate investor?
Yes, two books. One is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yep,
That was a great book. And two is 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
right there.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got 48, Mastery, War, Power, and Seduction.
Oh, nice. That one's good. I gotta get that one.
Well, again, it's attract, not chase.
Right. Right.
So
Exactly.
very smart, very smart.
Yeah.
All right, where are we now? Let's see. So, what's next for you, and why not get started?
What's next for me? Next for me is to, well, for the four of us to grow our company to originating at least $1.5 billion in loans on an annual basis, diversifying into larger asset classes than what we're financing today, larger developments, um, and yeah, that's the next goal for our company for the next 5 years.
So, this is my number 100% networking question. What does your
Yeah.
business need today to get there?
What does the business need today to get there? That is a very good question. Cheaper source of money, cheaper money from our investors today. Um, I think that would be huge. But also, I think it also comes down to having the right people with you on the journey, and we've definitely built that in the past 7 years, and we're keep adding and keep building those key people. So I think that's also very important. Having the right people around you. Um, I think that's huge.
So, one of my last questions here, this is always the curveball because it wasn't on your notes.
Let's do it.
What question should I have asked you today that I didn't?
Wow. What question should have you asked? Damn, that is a curveball. That is a curveball. You hit a lot of really good points. Um, I guess a good question would be like, what do I personally like in my downtime? Like, what do I like to do? I think that would be a good question, just to learn about someone.
Sal, what do you like to do in your downtime?
That's a great question because I'm going to start using this in my podcast that I do. So I train Muay Thai, which is great. I love it. I'm very health conscious, so I try to eat clean and eat healthy. I go to the gym. Muay Thai is one of my favorite things to do. Even though, like when I was younger, I all I cared about was cars and space, which I still do love to this day. I love what Elon Musk has been doing with SpaceX. It's amazing. But I also like I still love cars, so I'm part of a car club in the city, which is amazing. And then I also go like we go on like some runs together, like we all get together and like we drive up to upstate New York. But I also go on like racetracks, so I love racing. I just love cars in general. Um, but yeah, that's what I do on my off time, and of course reading. Reading is also huge, and self development and improvement is what I work on as well.
So, you hit a couple of my buttons. I've got a 1997 Atlantic Blue Beamer Roadster that I had shipped down here.
Nice.
That car's going to die on this island, and it'll live a good life.
Yeah.
What's your baby? What's your car?
I have right now. I have an AMG GTR Mercedes. It's a beautiful car. Handling on that thing is insane. It was made for the racetrack. Unfortunately, not for New York City. So yeah. But next on my plate right now, I'm trying to start building my car collection. Is going to be an E39 M5, and then probably an E60 M5 right after that.
Nice.
Yeah, and then probably After that, I probably would want to get I would want to get a Cosworth, Mercedes Cosworth, but that thing is going for a crazy amount of money right now. So no Cosworth. I would probably just get like a 190 SL. So yeah, I'm you see, like I can talk about cars all day.
Well, there's got to be a way to write that off.
Oh, 100%. I'm still trying to figure that part out.
Well, use it in your marketing, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Need it as a prop, right? You got to always
Yeah,
be clean with that, right? That was a really good question that I forgot to ask, and I'm glad you did.
awesome.
So that's what we got today. This was a lot of fun. And again, so gracious for you allowing me. I mean, in my 90 plus episodes, that's the first time I ever forgot to hit the record button. So I'm
All
putting
good.
this out there on the show, on the recording. Next time you come down to the island, you find me. I am getting you the best dinner on the island. I know
I
some,
appreciate it.
yeah, we got nice steakhouses. I don't care, whatever you like. It's on me for you being so gracious. And now it's recorded out there for the universe. So if our viewers like what they heard here, maybe they're in your neck of the woods, they might be developers or someone looking to go to We Lend. How could our viewers get in touch with you today?
Absolutely. And Brian, before I go into that, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I will definitely take you up on that offer, but I'm not letting you pay. Maybe you'll show me around the island.
Yeah, okay, sure. You come down and I'll figure it out. Yeah, love to, love to.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So you guys can find us through social media. It's We Lend LLC. We are on Instagram all the time, LinkedIn, We Lend LLC. Or if you want to reach out to us via call, 212-777-7780, or info@welendllc.com.
Excellent. Sal, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I learned a lot. I love when I get to learn from my guests like you. Ladies and gentlemen, all of my real estate peeps, Mr. Suleymanov, thank you again for being on the show. Any last words for my peeps?
No, hopes to be back here in 5 years and let you guys know about what our 1.5 billion looks like.
It's not going to take you that long because you've already said it out there.
Boom. I love
Boom.
it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, all of my real estate peeps, this is Brian Lucier with another episode of the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, signing off, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.